Welcome. This podcast is re-released from my Anchor podcast, which is distributed on Spotify. You can use the links below to find out more information. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy this episode. Greetings, podcast listeners. In today's episode, let's take a look at the LGBTQ+ community in drama. First, let's look at an Irish poet and playwright, Oscar Wilde, who was arrested for homosexuality. Oscar Wilde was born in Dublin, Ireland, on the 16th of October, 1854. In the 1870s, he went through a university education in Dublin's Trinity College and also Magdalen College in Oxford. University education was much less common back then, but it was available to Wilde as his father was a surgeon and his mother a writer and literary hostess, meaning that he was of upper class. His intelligence and creativity allowed him to use excelling metaphors to express his own ideas on complex topics like homosexuality. After graduating, he went on a voyage to America and gave lectures about the aesthetic movement, an art movement in the late 19th century which emphasized aesthetic value of literature, fine art, music, and other arts, and focused on producing works without political meaning, which is why he published comical works. The movement changed the way he wrote his novels, as he had inspiration to write satirical works. He also grew his hair long and wore fur-lined robes to support the movement. Wilde's output was diverse. In terms of poetry, a first volume was published in 1881. He also contributed to publications such as the Pall Mall Gazette, wrote fairy stories, and published a novel titled The Picture of Dorian Gray in 1891, which is popular to this day. He also served as editor of a Victorian magazine, The Woman's World, from 1887 to 1889. He was especially talented at writing plays, and he produced some widely popular comedies, such as Lady Windermere's Fan in 1892, and An Ideal Husband in 1895. Oscar Wilde lived during the Victorian era, where the development of technology was booming, including the invention of typewriters, which Wilde used to write some of his plays. However, during the Victorian era, religion was gaining a greater influence in England. In fact, in 1893, his play, Salome, was censored because it involved biblical characters, and Maccabee, which was deemed unacceptable by the Church of England. Therefore, the play was performed in Paris in 1896. During his career, Wilde wrote about male love to challenge the ideas that his country imposed on him while growing up, as homosexuality was rejected. He often used metaphors and language to hide the content of his writing. Despite marrying Constance Lloyd in 1884 and having 2 sons together, Wilde himself was gay, and in 1891 he began an affair with Lord Alfred Douglas, whom he nicknamed Bosie. In April 1895, after he accused Wilde of being homosexual, Wilde sued Bosie's father, the Marquis of Queensberry. The trial, which Wilde lost, exposed details of his private life, leading to his arrest and trial for gross indecency. As punishment, he was sentenced to 2 years of hard labour. While in prison, he composed a long letter to Douglas, which was posthumously published under the title De Profundis. In the letter, he refers to his imprisonment, saying, "Society sent me to prison." This refers to the societal expectations at the time, and homosexuality was not an accepted way of life. During his imprisonment, his wife took their children to Switzerland, and she changed her and her children's names. After his release from a 2-year prison sentence, Wilde sailed to France, where homosexuality was legal. Wilde died of meningitis on the 30th of November 1900, at the age of 46. Secondly, let's talk about the 1993 play Beautiful Thing and its 1996 screen adaptation. Beautiful Thing is a play written by Jonathan Harvey and first performed in 1993 at Bush Theatre in London. In 1996, Harvey adapted the play for the screen, and it was released in 1996 by Channel 4 Films. Harvey's play is about 2 teenage boys who fell in love. The main character is 16-year-old Jamie, who lives with his mother Sandra in a flat in Thamesmead, London. One of his neighbours is Steve, who is also 16. He often stays at Jamie and Sandra's flat to escape the beatings of his father. Steve and Jamie start off top and tailing in Jamie's bed, since there's nowhere else to sleep in the flat, but their relationship progresses into more. When the play was written, the age of consent for gay sex in the UK was still 21. Under Section 28, it was illegal to quote-unquote promote homosexuality in schools, and civil unions and same-sex marriages were not yet available. Still, with all the progress 30 years later, it is still a celebrated piece of work, exploring timeless themes, including domestic violence and the boy's self-discovery. The play has been performed all around the world: Hong Kong, France, Australia, and Italy, to name a few. But it has always been set in Thamesmead. Originally performed at the Tiny Bush Theatre in London, the writer, Jonathan Harvey, was a teacher at the time, and when the play became a phenomenon, he was amazed at the success that he had achieved. The play, transferred to the West End, has been staged around the world, and with the 1996 film directed by Hetty MacDonald, it reached an even wider audience. The play's writer, Jonathan Harvey, is married to casting director Paul Hunt. Harvey began his writing career as a young writer, entering a competition with his play The Cherry Blossom Tree, a blend of suicide, murder, and nuns, for which he won the National Girabank Young Writer of the Year award. In 1995, his play Boom Bang a Bang premiered at the Bush Theatre in London and centred on a group of friends gathering to watch the Eurovision Song Contest. The play was a success, with all tickets sold. Finally, his 1999 play, Husha by Mountain, looks at a world that has learned to live with HIV and AIDS. Thank you for listening to another episode of my LGBTQ+ education series. Please subscribe to be notified when the next episodes are released. The next episode, which will be released tomorrow, will be about the LGBTQ+ community in music.